And this is one of those matchups where you kind of felt Esper is definitely favored.
Yeah, in the post-board games, the Blue Devotion deck can try to play more of a nickel and dime card advantage game where it sets up things like Jace Architect of Thought, some counter spells, Biden of Thassa, to basically try to play a counter slivers game of get a couple cheap threats into play, protect them with counter spells, and if your opponent ever taps out, punish them with some powerful source of card advantage. This is not the easiest game plan to execute, and Supreme Verdict still throws a wrench into everything, but if the Blue Devotion deck wants to, it can devote a lot of sideboard slots and try to clean up these control matchups in the second and third game.
So Travis, it looks like we might be around turn 4. Nightveil Spectre is under a detention sphere from Harry, and now a Frostburn Weird is attacking, getting pumped twice, dropping Harry down to 16. And Travis leaves up an island and a Mutavault, basically trying to bluff counter Gainsay. Not sure if he has it or not, but
Take a look at Travis's sideboard here. A negate, 2 gainsays represent the counter spells in his sideboard. So actually pretty light on counters as far as Blue Devotion lists go.
Harry just plays a 5th land and passes. He's got 4 cards in his hand.
But this is, you know, what you're seeing Travis's board actually is pretty typical of what a Blue Devotion board looks like post-board against Esper. The deck can no longer go 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop because Supreme Verdict makes that sort of draw nonsense. So it's all about getting one threat into play and trying to extract value in other places.
Yeah, and they don't really need to commit much more, and eventually you're going to be forced to deal with one threat, something that seems like innocuous, like a Frostburn Weird. He's got the Mutavault to play, and now he has a second Mutavault to the board. Those cards are just so difficult for Esper to beat at times. And now it looks like he's going to play a 3-mana spell. Is this going to be Thassa? Thassa, one of the more powerful cards in the matchup. And yes, it is a Thassa. Does Harry have an answer for it?
And this is just a great board for Travis, although less so now that Thassa didn't resolve, or at least may not resolve with a dissolve on the stack here. But Mutavaults and one threat and a Thassa is a great recipe.
So Thassa is going to resolve. Harry cast Dissolve, but the Dissolve got Gainsayed. So I don't believe Harry has another counterspell. It looks like Gainsay is going to resolve, and Thassa, as a result, resolve. So Thassa really important in this matchup. Even if he doesn't have Blue Devotion, it allows him to scry each turn, constantly set up, and it survives Supreme Verdict. So if you can get like a Jace Architect of Thought or a Biden in play, suddenly you can have a really good board position.
Yeah. Alongside one Frostburn Weird and 2 Mutavaults is a really great setup because there's a lot of insurance against Supreme Verdict.
So Harry deploys a Detention Sphere, dealing with the Thassa. Unfortunately, he only has 2 mana up, and now Travis, he's got Frostburn Weird and 2 Mutavaults in play, so I wouldn't be surprised if he just said, you know what, I'm going to activate both my Mutavaults and attack you for 6 this turn.
Yep. Force Harry to do something. You still have to concern yourself with, does that give an opening for Harry to just play Elspeth? And now am I in trouble that way? But in a general sense, I agree with you. He does have a lot of flexibility for the way that he can play out his turns here. He can pressure Harry quite a bit without having to add to his board. He can also potentially add one of his powerful 4-mana threats this turn. This wouldn't necessarily be a bad spot to try to land Jace or Biden.
Yeah, if he had a Jace or a Biden, he does have a Detention Sphere in case Harry does follow up with a Elspeth. And the fact that Harry missed the land drop, I think makes him a little more comfortable to attack for 7 here. So that's what he's going to do. He activates both Mutavaults and then pumps Frostburn Weird twice, attacking Harry for 7. Let's see if Harry wants to do anything. I think he might have an Azorius Charm.
Right, he's contemplating whether or not he wants to Azorius Charm one of Travis's attackers here, or if he needs to cycle it to try to find more action, decides that he would rather take care of a Mutavault for a turn.
Yeah, so he's going to take 5, dropping to 10. And Harry's in a tough spot here because he doesn't have a Sphinx of Revelation to refill his hand, and he just has a Supreme Verdict, which again, that will deal with the Frostburn Weird, but not a very efficient way to deal with a 2-mana creature. So Harry draws a card for the turn, and he is forced to cast Supreme Verdict for a Frostburn on the Frostburn Weird. And this is the exact situation Travis wants to be in. He wants to be able to force Harry to use his Supreme Verdicts inefficiently. So now Travis can deploy additional threats. He still has that second Mutavault on top of his library. So Travis, you know, everything's going according to plan for his Blue-White Devotion deck right now.
Yeah, you might wonder, why did Harry Supreme Verdict away only one Frostburn Weird? The answer is he knows Travis isn't deploying anything else until that Supreme Verdict gets cast. So
yeah, I was talking to Sam Black, you know, the resident mono blue expert, and he was saying that more often than not, when he's playing this matchup, they're usually forced to just Supreme Verdict away like one Judge's Familiar or something, because you're not going to commit more to the board, you know, and they're kind of put in these positions. And yet again, we see Harry forced to Supreme Verdict one Frostburn word away.
And it's easy to get, have this get lost in the shuffle because of all these different high power spells that are getting cast and all these different sideboard plans. All of this is enabled by Mutavault. This plan is impossible to execute at nearly the efficiency that Travis is doing it without these 2 copies of Mutavault in play.
So Travis plays a Hollow Fountain tapped and activates both Mutavaults and passes. And it looks like Harry has a 6 land. Not sure what his last card is.
Looks like just 2 copies of Syncopate in Harry's hand.
Yeah, so Travis here, if he just activates both Mutavaults, Harry does have 1 Mutavault of his own, so he could throw it in front and at least stop himself from losing this turn. Travis has a Detention Sphere and 2 other cards in his hand.
Yeah, when I was speaking about, I've been talking to players a lot about, how I feel Mutavault is the best card in Standard. I brought it up in the broadcast, and even if Mutavault isn't the best card in your own deck, it's likely to be the best card in your opponent's deck, and Mutavaults trade. So if nothing else, you should be having Mutavaults to be trading with Mutavaults. And that's essentially the reason that they're in Harry's list right now.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that Mutavault and Thoughtseize are probably the 2 best cards in Standard right now.
Yeah, I think Mutavault is the best card by a margin, and then Thoughtseize is number 2.
And that's what we get. We get 2 Mutavaults attacking, and Harry activates his own Mutavault, throwing it in front of 1 and dropping to 2 now. So he's able to deal with 1 of the Mutavaults. Unfortunately, he's set 2, and he needs to find an answer to that second one now. And he doesn't. He just draws a land, and he passes back to Travis. So Travis draws a card for the turn. Let's see what he draws. But no matter what he draws, it's unlikely he's not going to activate his Mutavault here.
It would require quite a bluff on Harry's part to get Travis to not attack with this Mutavault. Harry shows 2 Syncopates, and that's it.
So Harry Corvese falls to Travis Harrison, and we have the 3rd player now in our top 4. Greg Hammock, playing Red Aggro, defeats Andy Vorel, and he will play against Travis Harrison, playing Blue-White Devotion. So you were talking about it. Greg was definitely rooting for Harry. He wanted Harry to win the matchup because Red Aggro is probably a better matchup against Esper than Blue-White Devotion. Unfortunately for him, Travis did actually defeat Harry. So Travis versus Greg, that's going to be our first top 4 matchup. And then we have Chris Van Meter, our 3rd top 4 player. He's going to play against Jacob Neighbors, who defeated Mira Banat, playing Black-White Midrange. So we're going to have Black-White Midrange versus Jund Monsters in one side of our bracket, and we're going to have Blue-White Devotion versus Red Aggro in the other side of our bracket.
Now, for the mono-red player, the Blue-White matchup is a little bit better than the mono-blue matchup because they have some lands that come into play tapped. They have a Hallowed Fountain here and there. That helps a lot, but Master of Waves is a disaster. Even beating Frostburn Weird is a real challenge. Greg has no copies of Byzantium Mortars in his main deck, so all of those kind of threats are just a real challenge to get through in time. And Master of Waves can win the game even with very little board alongside it. So
yeah, Jace can be difficult for the mono red deck at times to deal with. He doesn't have to contend with that. And at the same time, Rapid Hybridization is obviously a much more efficient spell